So, I mean, there certainly is that possibility, but I don't think we're going to see it anytime in 2021. That's not going to happen until 22 or 23.
What's that? We are live. Welcome to State of the Month with the National Real Estate Post's Brian Stevens. We are live on the Facebook. Brian, it's May. The world is opening. The world is opening back up. I know our city, they are removing a lot of the restrictions to restaurants, so that's nice.
Yeah.
So what does this mean for real estate, my friend?
Well, I mean, I think in most markets, it probably doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. I don't know how much more you can overheat an overheated market in every major metro area. Like I said, there's areas in North Dakota that are busy right now. Oh my God, when North Dakota is when there's a feeding frenzy in real estate in North Dakota, that just spells doom and gloom for the rest of the country. So I think opening up is it can't add a whole bunch more to what's happening in real estate. The biggest concerns or questions that we're going to have with real estate going forward are going to be some of the policies that the new administration are going to enact and how that's going to affect people. I would look at policies through the mortgage channels more so than COVID ending to see what's going to happen. Of course, there is one element of opening up our economy again that is not being talked about too much because I don't know how likely this is. But everybody's just assuming with more people getting out there and more people going to work that our economy, and we're starting to see the numbers right now, with people going back to work, our economy is going to start to do even better than it is right now. So the simple assumption is, of course, that's going to help housing. Housing doesn't need any help. But there is another side to that coin, isn't there? And that's that everybody goes back to work. 25 to 30% of our commercial real estate remains empty, due to the problems associated with COVID. We're still seeing that here in downtown Vacaville in California, where I guess we're kicking butt. As I look around me, and we've lost probably 25 to 30% of our businesses. And when all the money that is being handed out to businesses, the PPP money, when all that starts to dry up and we start to look around and we start to see all these vacancies around the country, you might see the economy contract. I mean, I see that as a very definite possibility. If you think about it, when you look at commercial real estate, how many people have permanently relocated to different areas, different states? I'd tell you right now, I see it all over the place where we live in Northern California. I don't know if I told you this. The cheapest house in little old Vacaville, California, where I live, was listed for $475,000.
The cheapest,
$475,000, and it sold north of $500,000, and it sold in 48 hours.
Normal. Sounds normal,
but who, as a first-time home buyer, can afford a $500,000 house? Who can do it? So you take somebody's median income versus the median value of a property in that community. How much does your average person make, median person make? How much does a median house cost? And can the average person buy the average house in your community? Mm-hmm. And the answer in so many of these overheated markets is not just no, it's emphatically no. And because we've started to really kind of we've sped up the inevitable, but it's been very transformative for the past 12 months, hasn't it? When we see people who are moving to different states, who are moving to different areas, and we're starting to see some employers go out there and say, you know what? I think I like my productivity with my employees better with them working at home than we have them coming down to the office every day. Where we live, we have people who commute from Sacramento to San Francisco every day. That's a 2-hour commute in either direction. So it's common sense. How effective is somebody going to work if they have to commute for a minimum of 4 hours every day? Would you rather have that person working from home, or would you rather have that person working from Boise, Idaho? Or would you need that person in downtown San Francisco that have the highest tax rates and the highest real estate costs of anywhere in the country? Well, it becomes a pretty simple thing for most companies to make those type of decisions. So as we start to see where the dust settles and we see this mass migration to other states and to the suburbs, what is that going to do to commercial real estate in a lot of our major metro areas? And how many people are going to be underemployed because we simply don't need them anymore? Mm-hmm. The restaurants, all the support infrastructure. So, I mean, there certainly is that possibility, but I don't think we're going to see it anytime in 2021. That's not going to happen until 22 or 23.
What's that?
Maybe a contraction in our economy, and seeing it's not going to kill home values. It might stabilize them a little bit. It might make them a little bit more reasonably priced. And again,
inventory though? We're going to need inventory and able to do that.
Well, here's something I want you to think about. Okay. From 1950 to 1959, so for all of the 50s, okay, we built 21 million houses in that decade. In the decade of the 60s, we built 20 million houses. In the decade of the 70s, we built 25.8 million houses. In the 90s, 25 million houses.
You skipped the 80s.
Oh, no, in the 80s, excuse me. In the 80s, 25.2 million. In the 90s, 26.7.
Okay.
2000 to 2009, 27.1.
Okay.
From 2010 to 2019, 5.8 million homes.
Whoa.
We went from, now do these numbers, from the decades respectively, from the 50s all the way up to 2009. 21 million, 20 million, 25.8, 25.2, 26.7, 27.15.
Why?
We haven't built this few homes since the 1930s.
And that's got nothing to do with COVID.
Well, no, because this whole thing started in 2010.
Right.
No, this had everything to do with the last housing crash that we had before, doesn't it? Because what happened is we really overbuilt the industry. Or excuse me, we really overbuilt, anticipating that 2008, 9, and 10 were going to be huge years in real estate, and they weren't. Have you heard this story? Can I tell something that's a mildly, some people find it offensive story, maybe mildly inappropriate, or should we just?
Let's go for it. This is you. This is National Real Estate Boys. This is not LabCoatAgents speaking here.
Okay, all right. So when you think about 2008, now this is not. First of all. This is supposition from a number of different people who've looked at this, who could or could not have agendas on it, but it is fairly interesting. So new family formations is a huge number that determines how much new construction we're going to need for houses. So that's when, Junior flies to the coop with his girlfriend and has a kid, and they kind of move out on their own and get that's a new family formation, a new house formation. So in 2007, our new family formations were skyrocketing. So remember, when somebody's going to build a subdivision, it takes 3 years to break ground on that. So if I say I want to build a subdivision of houses over there, by the time I get all of my reports done, environmental impact reports, all my fees and costs associated with it and licenses associated with it, it's about 3 years. So we're projecting where real estate is going to be in 3 years. So in 2007, we're thinking, oh my God, 2006, we're going, this is going to be gangbusters. This is going to be crazy. So what we did is we took our projections based on what we'd done in the past. And we said, well, we're going to go up. So they built a whole bunch of houses, or they started laying foundations. Well, your average new home formation, the average family who buys a home for the first time in a new family formation are in their mid-30s. Okay. So you would have to go back 35 years or somewhere thereabouts to find out what made new home formations fall off a cliff. Why did we go from 2006 and 7, where new home formations were going through the roof? The new home formations just stopped. Like, people quit, like something happened. If you go back 35 years prior, that was when Roe v. Wade was passed. And so 35 years later, you have a generation of people who would otherwise be buying homes who aren't around to buy those homes. So we overbuilt the market, and then we didn't have the new family formations to buy the inventory that was created that took those 3 years. That was 1973. You go 73 and you just start climbing your way up to whatever it was. And isn't that interesting?
Very.
Isn't that crazy? So what's happened is we've had the pendulum swing the other way. New home builders, what they discovered was, if they paid the market wrong, they can bankrupt their companies. And we saw a lot of the small to middle-sized new home builders out there who went defunct in 2008, 9, and 10. I don't know if you guys have it around you, but we had like all the roads and infrastructure put in to build the houses, and then just weeds. Nothing ever got built. And then, of course, what happened is when these companies went bankrupt, you would have the other ones who found a way to weather the storm, who went in and bought them for pennies on the dollar. And of course, when the market rebounded, they made a killing on this. So you could speculate the reason why we have such few new home formations right now. But what we do know is we have a hot market. And if it requires 24 to 26 million homes per decade to build in order to keep prices sustainable, well, at least we can figure out the reasons why homes are not sustainable right now. The biggest concern that you should have here as a real estate agent or a mortgage loan officer, we went from 27 million homes for the decade 2000 to 2009 to 5.8 million. 27 million to 5.8 million. Mm-hmm. This is over a decade. That means the inventory issue is not going to be addressed overnight. You're not just going to wake up one day and build 22 million homes and get us where we need to be. It's just not going to happen. There needs to be broad, sweeping legislation that's passed in this country in order to do something to deal with what's becoming an epidemic in our country. Again, the median person in the city of Vacaville makes like $47,000 a year. The median price for a house is north of $500,000. You can't buy that house. You're not even in the same ballpark. You're not even playing the same sport type of thing.
That's a problem.
That is a problem. And it's a problem that's not going to be solvable in the very near future.
And where do you see that because right now the government's giving out grants for first-time home buyers, which makes no sense because there's no homes for them to buy. At what point do they get their heads out of their proverbial rear ends and figure out that they need to be doing something to stoke the builders to get them out building starter homes, which no builder wants to do, by the way?
We're asking a group of politicians to be sensible who haven't been sensible in the past, right? I honestly don't know. They talk about misdiagnosing the problem. We don't have, the issue is not down payments right now. And we are throwing enormous amounts of cash that aren't going to have a fundamentally fundamentally different change in a person's payment. We're dealing with cash to close issues here. I mean, pretty significant cash to close, but it's not getting us any closer to the solution of our lack of inventory. And you're absolutely right. What we need to have is broad, sweeping legislative changes in order to break down some of the barriers and maybe even give tax credits and tax incentives to new home builders to go out there and build those cookie cutter 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,800 square foot homes. And by the way, an 1,800 square foot home was considered a McMansion 30 years ago. You understand that, don't you?
Yeah.
The size of homes have progressively over the decades gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And the homes that we're building right now, on average, they're somewhere around 3,000 square feet. Can you imagine that? Like 3,000 square feet? It'd be great for if kids in a marriage, because you could go to the different side of your small country and, just isolate yourself from those who drive you crazy, right? But when your average home is almost 3,000 square feet, it's pretty darn nuts. First house I bought, true story, 780 square feet, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, cutest little darn house I ever owned. Can you imagine that even being built today? You can't even find a condo that big.
People are buying those and tearing them down, building bigger houses on them.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
It's interesting. I mean, so where is the opportunity for real estate in all of this? Otherwise, not necessarily great news.
Well, it's not bad news. It really, there's just never bad news. It's either reading the situation the right way or the wrong way and having the fortitude to go out and do something about it. That's all it is. There's no good or bad. There's no good or bad markets. They're just different markets. They're always a good market for somebody and they're always a bad market for another person. Okay. Sure. So very simply put, and we've talked about this quite a bit, you need to follow where the need is. Where is the need in real estate? It's inventory. This one's a no-brainer. It's a layup, right? Inventory. I'm looking at this new home construction, 27 million houses over a decade, down to less than 6. What would I do? Again, we talked about this. if I was a real estate agent right now, I would go out there and I would offer free broker priced opinions, BPOs. I would go to neighborhoods. I would just go straight out to neighborhoods or any area that I'm personally farming or I farmed in the past. And I would go out there and I would door knock. I think there's one thing we can do now again, maybe. Flyers are still a great thing, but what I would do with my BPOs is I would go find the people who own homes, who've owned these houses for over 3 years, and I would just call them up and I would say, hey, listen, I'm doing some research on your neighborhood, and I'm trying to determine exactly where the value of this neighborhood sits as it stands today in the direction it's going. The only way for me to accomplish this is to go out there and give my professional broker priced opinion on a number of different houses across the Meadowlands or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering, would you allow me to come into your house and do a professional broker priced opinion where I'm going to do a comparative analysis against other properties in the area that have just recently sold? I will add or subtract depending on the amenities and quality of your house versus those houses. And I will give you a very specific value in terms of what your house is worth today. Now, this generally costs $100, but I'm going to offer it to you free of charge. And I'm going to do this because this helps me, because then I get a better idea of what's going on in this market, because I'm a professional real estate agent. And it helps you because you know exactly where you stand right now with your property in terms of its value. Here's the reason I would do that. First of all, I'm not selling anything, am I? I'm not selling a damn thing there. How many homeowners right now would be interested in finding out exactly what their house is worth? Not a Zestimate, not a what can I fleece it for you from with a Zillow offer or an open door offer. No. What about a broker priced opinion? How many people would want to have that information? And the answer is a ton. Here's what you're going to discover as a real estate agent is when you hand over that broker priced opinion to them, okay, here's the comps. Here's the comp on this property. Here's your comp here. Here's your comp here. Here's what your value is. Now your value is $497,336 based on my comparative analysis. And they're going to say, oh my God, that's crazy. Then what you could do if you chose to, but you know, a girl can dream, now can't we, is I would go find out, you could get a pretty close indication in terms of how much they owe on that property, who's got it lien, do a title search on it, figure out ballpark where they are. Well, I suspect you have, you know, $197,000 in equity in your property. You bought it 4 years ago. You have these 2 loans on it. So I'm not saying you should do this. I'm not saying you should, but you know, this is your equity you have in your house right now. You could buy this house or this house or this house in your neighborhood, you know, kind of that move up house. You could take the equity that you have, and then you could certainly, you could use that equity to get yourself out of mortgage insurance. You're buying into what's always going to be a softer market. The bigger the house you buy, the softer the market is always going to be. So if you can especially find those entry-level homes, those are the hot tamales out there that are going for a premium in every major metro area. And then you buy into an invariably a slightly softer market, but you're still taking advantage of all the great low interest rates that we have right now. What would surprise you too is there's still half the people in this country who have mortgages who have not refinanced. There are half the people in this country right now who have rates in the high 4s and 5s. I mean, it's a stunningly high number. So they could be buying into a market with a lower overall interest rate, borrowing somebody else's money at a cheaper rate. You might be able to get them out of mortgage insurance. Now, is this labor intensive for a real estate agent? You bet your butt it is. You bet your butt this is all labor intensive. But as we've talked about before, you're compensated on the same level as a brain surgeon for your time. I think that's pretty hard work too. I'm not saying I hate when people do that. Realtors do that. Oh, you know, but would you like to have, you know, who would you like to have for your doctor? Would you like to have a professional? You're not a doctor. You're a real estate agent. It's noble work, but you're not a brain surgeon. But here's my point is, let's say you go out here and do this. First of all, I know that I've done this so many times before. I know that you will set the appointments. I know you will put yourself in a position to put together a number of BPOs. I know that you will ingratiate yourself to homeowners in your community that you do not know right now and they don't know you. I don't know if they're going to sell their house. I don't know if they're going to sell it with you, but I guarantee you it's putting in the work. This is putting in the hard work right now that will invariably pay dividends down the road. if you made this part of your daily, weekly grind, and if your average real estate agent is doing less than one side of a transaction per quarter, trust me, there's about 125,000 real estate agents in this country. We've got plenty of time to do this. If you were to sit there and put this into your grind in terms of what you're doing and farming a neighborhood and getting to know these communities, you will find listings. That's what we're doing. We're fishing for listings. It might take a month. It might take 3 months. But if you continue the grind and make this part of what you do, you are setting yourself apart from your competition. And that always helps in sales, guys. So that's what I would do. I would find out where the need is. The need is with inventory, and then put together a plan of attack and then go implement that attack.
Which also kind of piggybacking off that too is as a realtor, you need to look at this and say, there's 1.4 million of me and 1 million listings. That is going to correct itself. So there's probably only 25 or 30 agents that will actually watch this. If that, there's 8 that are on here live. My point in saying that is that most of your colleagues in the industry will be out of the industry in the next 12 to 24 months, if I had to guess. I don't know what you think about that, Brian, but there are too many real estate agents that got into the business because they lost their job due to COVID, got into the business because they thought it would be easy. And there's just not enough business to go around. So those that actually take the time to educate themselves and do this sort of thing, I think, are the ones who are going to stand above, because let's be honest, it's not going to, you said it, it's not going to be fixed overnight. This isn't going to be a quick fix.
No, and I'll tell you what. So I ran down this road a couple of years ago. There was a time a few years ago where there was 25,000 real estate agents in Southern California and 5,000 listings. Do the math. Do the math on. I mean, just insane, right? Like the numbers are actually crazy. I also did another study. I said, well, because I was doing something out in New York at one point. It was in upstate New York, and I said, okay, well, would you rather be a real estate agent in White Plains, New York, or in Bellevue, Washington? White Plains, New York, average home sales price on a house, $165,000. Bellevue, Washington, $780,000. Where would you rather be a real estate agent? Which market? Well, obviously, Bellevue, right? Would it surprise you to find out that real estate agents in White Plains, New York made more money, flat out more money than your average real estate agent in Bellevue? Why is that? Market saturation versus a lack of saturation. I could sell something that was 1/7 the cost and out earn this person over here because of market saturation.
Because they could do more deals.
You're absolutely right. How many people got into real estate, or how many people even dusted off their real estate licenses when this whole COVID thing came around? Because we started seeing this migration out to the burbs, and there's a lot of people said, well, maybe it'll work this time around. And what we're going to find is there's going to be a thinning of the herds, and it will be good for real estate.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And that's the thing, is look for the opportunities. What about last topic?
Sure.
What do you think about, we were debating this last week in our office, talking about forbearance, and it's gone back and forth on whether or not we think there will be a huge, obviously a huge number of foreclosures that are happening. And there's the other side of the fence that are saying, I actually don't think there is going to be, because so many people are sitting on so much equity, they'll sell before they lose the house. Where do you lie in there? And what is the potential? Because to me, and let me preface this by saying, to me, when I hear forbearance and foreclosures and, oh my God, here comes another 07, 08, I think to myself, okay, where's the opportunity? Do I need to be saving my money and preparing my money so I can start buying these homes as they come off the market for pennies on the dollar? What do you think, first of all, where we're going to go? Which side are you on the forbearance question? And then where do you see the opportunity there?
Well, really what it could do is it could go in either direction. But here's the interesting thing. It's the big thing that everybody always talks about is the equity. Oh, well, you're not going to have foreclosures because worst case scenario, all I'm going to have to do is just go ahead and sell the house. How many people did we learn from 2006, 7, and 8 waited until the sheriff came and knocked on their door to kick them out before they dealt with a very difficult problem that was in front of them? And the answer was way more than we would have thought. People who did have equity in the past. According to the Joint Economic Committee from the United States Congress, this is a United States Congress Joint Economic Committee, the average foreclosure costs $77,935 to prevent it. Or excuse me, while preventing a foreclosure on average costs $3,300. This was back in 2008. So according to the United States Congress Joint Economic Committee, $78,000 to cost you to get it to have a foreclosure versus $3,300. Now, if it's $78,000 in 2008 to go through a foreclosure, how much of that equity is it going to eat through? How many people have 80,000 plus in equity? Well, there's going to be a huge number of them, but how many people have 80,000 less in equity, which means those what would otherwise be a standard sale under a duress situation with somebody who might be 30, 60, 90 days late, that all of a sudden becomes a foreclosure. If you have less than $80,000 in equity and you wait for the sheriff to come and knock on your door, that's a foreclosure. If you have $50,000 in equity, $60,000, $70,000, maybe even $80,000 in equity right now, and you wait for the sheriff to come show up at your door, that's a foreclosure. Legal fees, because we can fees, and everything, and paying all that back interest on those payments that you missed. And especially right now with the forbearance, keep in mind, you have some people who've been in this house for 2 years. 2 years without making a payment. What if they have $1,500 or $1,000 a month in interest on that thing? I mean, you're looking at $24,000 in interest right there, and you're going to pay interest on your unpaid interest on top of that. So though I do agree that we're sitting in a much better situation financially than we were back in 2007 and 2008, we are by far from out of the woodwork, especially when you consider the payments that have been missed and human nature to not deal with the problems that you have in front of you. Most people don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to deal with my hardest issues the first thing I do to get them out of the way. Now, somebody actually told me this in sales. This might be a good tip for a real estate agent or especially a lender. It says, my Ernie Davis said, he goes, when I wake up in the morning and he goes, first thing I do when I get to work, he goes, I make those hard phone calls. I make the hard phone calls first because I want to get them out of the way. I don't want them sitting on my shoulders. 99% of the people out there don't make those hard phone calls first. They don't deal with a hard situation first. They deal with them last. And so again, it could go either way. And I'll tell you, here's my big thing on this, Jeff, is real estate agents, they play an enormous role in the outcome here, don't they? Because let's say, and we spoke about this in our previous conversations, but it's the same thing with inventory. What if you were to go out to some of these sites where you could figure out who's behind on their mortgage? Like 8% of the people in this country are behind on their mortgage payment right now. What if you could find those 8% of the people in your community as a real estate agent and say, listen, if you wait for this to go to a foreclosure, it might be, or if you wait for the sheriff to show up here and this house goes into a foreclosure, it could cost you upwards of $80,000 and you got $50,000 in equity. We need to sell this house today. And you need to put that equity that you got in the bank and live to fight another day when the economy starts to turn around. Like real estate agents could play a huge role in preventing loan modifications and preventing foreclosures. If real estate agents were to mobilize and create a national outreach program to the 8% of people who are currently behind on their mortgage. Again, twice as many people are not making their mortgage payment today than there were in the lead up to the greatest housing recession the world has ever known. Twice as many people today. That's what I would like to see from NAR. I'll tell you this right now. NAR does all these commercials. I just saw one this weekend when I was watching my San Francisco Giants. They actually lost 3 out of 4 to the Padres. But I saw a NAR commercial. It's like, realtors, we're here for you. We're the National and California Association of Realtors. And we're here because we make dreams come true. Do we really need that commercial? I'd like to see from NAR, the commercial I'd like to see from NAR is, hey, listen, there are 8% of the people in this country who are suffering due to a lack of unemployment or underemployment as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. 8% of the people are behind on their mortgage right now and could face a foreclosure. You need to sit down and speak with a local real estate agent to find out what best options that you have in front of you. Because if you wait for your house to get foreclosed on when you can't make payments now, you realize that according to the United States Congress, what I don't have it in front of me now, a foreclosure could cost you upwards of $80,000. I'd like to see like a commercial like that with a very actionable message that really just talks about where real estate is today. Not these cutesy little warm and fuzzy things. Real estate agent makes dreams come true. No, what we need to have is we need NAR putting commercials out there saying, talk to the real estate agent now before it's too late. That's what we need.
That would make sense, but that'll happen when pigs fly. Just like thinking the government's going to, come up with something to help spur an inventory. Probably neither will ever happen.
Right. Especially when right now the best thing they came up with is giving $25,000 away to a handful of people across the country who are deemed poor.
Yeah, who can't afford the house they're about ready to buy anyway.
Yeah, they're deemed poor, and they can make upwards of 180% of the median income for the area. If you make 180% of the median income for your area, you're not poor for your area. You're not average for your area. You're kind of stacked for your area. You're making almost 200% what the average person in your community does. But this is what they're deeming low to moderate income, 200%. And it really just speaks to it. What that speaks to more than anything is just how incredibly unaffordable the housing market has become.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Well, my friend, we're 30 minutes and I think this was good. I think it's good to continue to talk about these things. For those of you that joined us today live, thank you for being on. You're in a class of your own. You're in a minute percentage of people that are taking the time to educate themselves. And I do think that is a massive difference in your future success versus the rest of them who got their license thinking they were going to make a quick buck. It's going to get hard.
You know what I did before, Jeff? We should run this down again because this is way more relevant today than it was, probably 6 years ago when I did this. But what I did is I put together Zoom meetings, and we got real estate agents in 5 different markets around the country, just a handful in each market. And then what we did was we put everybody on Zoom together. We all put together our scripts to call those entry-level homes. Actually, what you really need to do is call the entry-level homes on people who are currently behind on their mortgage payment as a real estate agent.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. Then you'll kill it. And then you take my BPO approach. And the cool thing is we did this whole thing on Zoom. So we had agents all over the country, and it's kind of crowdsourcing. What's one thing good happens to one person, everybody sees it and motivates everybody else to do so. And then, of course, when somebody has that ugly conversation with somebody who screams at them and calls them bad names, it becomes a moment of levity more so than it becomes a moment of panic. Something that we can now all giggle about together.
Right. Yeah.
Somebody should talk about.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Brian, will you message me the link to the construction over the decades numbers? I'm going to put that in the post when I share it.
Absolutely.
Send me the link.
Okay, I'm going to send it to you right now, man.
And then anybody who wants that link, just go check it out. I'll share it in the LabCoatAgents. So go check out the share, and I'll put that link in there.
Cool beans.
Cool, man.
Bye, my friend.
Talk soon.
Talk to you. Bye.
Bye-bye.